threshold, or anyone who does a lot of charitable giving, where they're trying to stack all their charitable donations together using a donor advised fund. So I'll give you an example of what this looks like. Brad and Angela earn $180,000 a year living in Texas. They own a $350,000 home with the hefty property tax down there, $8,700 a year in property taxes. They also pay $10,000 in mortgage interest, and they donate $5,000 a year to their various charities. So if I just calculated their annual deductions this way, their deductions would be $23,750 a year, which is not good because the standard deduction is at 24, which means they're getting no actual tax benefit from this. So what do they do instead? They bunch things together. They say, I'm not only going to pay this year's property tax bill, but I'm going to prepay next year's property tax bill because it turns out it's assessed in November, so I can pay it by the end of this year. And I'm going to do 4 years of charitable giving all at once into a donor advised fund. So I get $40,000 in total deductions, 4 years worth of charitable giving, $10,000 for mortgage, and $10,000 in property taxes up to the SALT cap. Now, next year, I've got hardly any deductions because I just front-loaded them all, but that doesn't matter because I was below the standard deduction anyways. And I will be in 2021. I will be in, again, the subsequent year until 2022. And now I do another 4 years worth of charitable giving because I made distributions out of my donor advised fund in 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. I depleted it. So now I re-up another 4 years of charitable giving, another 2 years of property taxes, and I go at it again. And the net result is I'm going to do all the same deductions and spending that I would have done anyways, but by lumping these things together, I got over the line in 2 years for a total of $32,000 of additional deductions over the line, which at a 24% tax rate for this client is almost $7,000 of tax savings just by doing all the property tax, mortgage interest, and charitable giving they were already doing, but lumping and clumping it together. And so you're going to find yourself doing a lot more tax planning around this. As we wrap up, though, a few final takeaways. The first is just to be cognizant again. Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is temporary through 2025, and then it sunsets. The only stuff that was permanent, aside from the corporate reform, was repealing the individual mandate for health insurance and making all CPI adjustments in the tax code based on chained CPI instead, which ever so slightly slows the inflation rate on tax bracket changes. Now, again, Republicans hope they're eventually going to make this permanent, as happened with President Bush's tax cuts. But the fact that it's not permanent does raise a question mark about what's going to happen in the future. I'd be surprised if we get any more tax legislation for the rest of this current presidential cycle, but just because once these things get done, it takes a couple of years for them to settle. But potentially 2020 after the next presidential election, depending on whether or not there's a change in power or a swing in Congress, or after 2024 elections, we may need to see another round of tax reform, either making this permanent, repealing it and going the other direction. The Democrats would also like to make permanent tax law, but they would like to stack the deductions and tax rates a little bit differently. And so we'll see whose version it is. But ultimately, I think you're going to see one more round of significant individual tax reform before we're ultimately done with this. And it may even do more to eliminate deductions. I wouldn't be surprised if in the final round, we simplify the system even further. The mortgage interest deduction probably goes away. It just becomes a mortgage credit that's targeted a little bit more at lower income folks. We'll keep the charitable deduction. We'll probably keep the medical expense deduction, and virtually everything else will just go away. And we may actually get rid of itemized deductions altogether. And in exchange for losing a few more deductions, the tax rates will come down further. That's just how tax reform works. Both parties do it that way. So we'll see what happens, but expect that we will get some additional round of tax reform in the next 4 to 8 years. The odds are very good. But until then, we got to plan with the laws that we've got. And the laws that we've got are the ones that we walk through here today. So I hope this is helpful for you as food for thought. And again, if you want some further detail on some of these strategies, the mortgage interest rules, the lumping and clumping strategies, we've got a link for you up here with just some articles with additional depth if you want to go further into this. But I hope it's been helpful food for thought, and thank you very much for your time.
Michael, thank you so much. This has been incredibly insightful. I know you've got a tremendous amount of resources on kitces.com. For those advisors participating, if you haven't already, I'd strongly encourage looking at membership options. We have some information that we will make available via this URL that you see here on the screen. We'll send out a follow-up email as well with some of the details. But again, thank you, Michael, and clearly the beginning of the journey with TCGA.